Pretty grim. So, I was going to do a bit of a review of the bike. So, I bought this bike in 2014. And I've had it out in the wind and rain for all that time, pretty much. And you know what? It hasn't done that bad. For a bike that's built down to a price, can't really argue with anything. I've dropped it twice. It's done pretty well. I think if you're going to buy one of these bikes, I know what to look out for, and it's these little beggars. They come off pretty easily. Just washing it and it'll just crack off and you're like, oh, that was nice. The paint finish on this doesn't really last. This, I don't even think they lacquered it. I'm not even sure they painted it. I think it's just a primer. I mean, as far as I can tell, that all rusted. I didn't do anything to that. That's all itself. Would have been nice if they'd done a decent finish on it. Probably would have looked an awful lot better. But I think, in all honesty, for like £10 you can buy a bottle of spray paint in that will look infinitely better than the rust that's on there. Might have to cut the bit out with my license plate on it. You know, it's stood up pretty well. The seat is really comfy, actually. I actually really like that. I've never had a problem with it. I've gone out on epic hour-long rides. No, like, we're talking like 6-7 hour rides, and I am not uncomfortable in the slightest. So I bought it second-hand, but it had about 4,000 miles on the clock. Was that right? Or 2? So it was pretty low mileage. It had basically just been broken in. I think it was 2. And it was basically, given that there are options that are on here, the panniers, the top box, the windshield, the engine guards. I mean, they're like an extra 800 grand. So, I mean, the bike brand new is 2.8k, and I picked up this for 2.8k. I mean, yeah, it loses a bit of value when it comes out of the shop, but it was in absolutely mint condition when I bought it. All of this rust and stuff's happened subsequently. I think it's the first version of the YBR that doesn't have a kickstart. They just deleted it on this version. Which is fine. I've never had a single problem with starting this bike at all. Not even the slightest hesitation. It's worked flawlessly for ages. I think it has about 10 horsepower. I don't even think that's brake horsepower, just 10 of the horses. It can do 70 on a flat road. I think on a bit of an incline, maybe 65, depending on how full the tank is. The tank does seem to take 1 or 2 miles off the top speed if it's completely full, or if you're quite heavily laden like mine is. I would say the acceleration's pretty good, up to about 40 miles an hour. After then, it's a bit lackluster. I mean, it can get to 70, but you know, it'll take some time, and I really wouldn't feel comfortable overtaking someone, say, doing 50 miles an hour, because I just don't have that oomph to carry on going. But you know, I do quite a lot of long rides with this out into Wales. I do a lot of city riding, a lot of suburban, urban. I do all sorts on this, and you know, very happy with it, very capable. It keeps up with the big bikes on the twisties, because even though they've got all that power, they can't put it down. You know, you're still limited to how fast you can take a corner, not how fast the bike can go. This will usually keep up until it, opens out and becomes a straight, and then, you begin to lose your advantages of a super light and nimble bike. I think the shield looks kind of ridiculous, but in all honesty, it works really well. I've not had any problems with it. I think it's probably made the ride a lot more comfortable. And although I want a naked bike, I'm slowly being convinced otherwise. I think a naked bike probably isn't the right choice for someone like me. I put a few extras on it. Not loads, I didn't go mad. I don't want to ruin everything. Just put a sat nav and mounted that onto the handlebars here. It's a special locking type, so theoretically you can't steal it. Like I said, I've dropped this twice. I think engine guards are a must. Look at this damage. I dropped that doing about 60 miles an hour or 55, and yeah, that was pretty much the whole damage. That and the exhaust. I won't lie, the exhaust took a bit of a pounding. I believe you can pick up these covers for something like 35 quid in new condition, and that would spruce the bike up quite a bit. I know when I came off the bike, I need it pretty hard there, and there's a slight detent. But I think, more of the technical aspects. It's a 4-stroke engine. It's fuel injected, 5-gear gearbox. The 5th gear really is a bit, I don't use it that much, frankly. It's only for when you're absolutely just redline at like 65, then yeah, you can use the 5th gear for like the last 5 mile per hour between 65 and 70. But I guess it's just stop you ruining the engine. The tyres, the original tyres I had on this weren't that good. I replaced these with Pilot Street. I wanted some kind of Pilot Sport, but they just don't do them for this bike. The Pilot Street though are very nice. I noticed immediately when I put these on, the feel in handling had changed, and it just became a lot more precise, and I did prefer it. Well worth doing. I got Pilot Streets on the back as well. I don't know quite what size they are. Yep, single front caliper brake. It's kind of like an over-engineered push bike, but it works. I mean, the brakes aren't amazing, but they do their job. I've got no problems with them. They've never failed to stop me yet. The rear's got drum brakes. I've replaced the chain with an X gold chain type, and I've got new sprockets, so I've definitely worn through a chain and a sprocket. I've already gone through that after, what am I on? Yeah, 13,000 miles. I mean, I only had them done about 1,000 miles ago, so yeah, I guess the chain and the sprocket don't last. I'm not saying they don't last, but you'd expect to replace them around about the 12k mark at least. As for the brakes, honestly, I've not replaced the front brakes yet, and I can't say there's loads and loads on there. There's about 1.5 mil on each side. Well, to a lie, 1.5 mil on one and two on the others. I mean, they could probably do a replacement, but I think they would go a few thousand miles more. Because these are the original brakes. So we're looking at like 14,000 miles I'd expect the front ones to last for, depending on usage. Back brakes, I've no idea. There is a little indicator here saying how worn they are, and I don't know if that's barely worn or fully worn, but I'm gonna lean towards fully worn, given how long this bike has been around and been used. As far as maintenance goes, pretty easy. I mean, what you do is there's the filler, pop that off. Usually it gets a bit seized. I find that as much as it says not to use hand tools, maybe a plier wrapped in a cloth is kind of nice, it doesn't damage it. And the sump bolt is down here, so you take that off, and then it takes 1 litre of 4-stroke engine oil, so it's a piece of cake. You just empty a litre bottle into it and it's done. It takes about 10 minutes, probably less, in your actual time. It's more just waiting for it to drip out. I replaced the bulb with this brighter bulb. I think I made a mistake. It's banded in the middle and it doesn't seem to reflect that well now. I think you should use a different type of bulb. I wouldn't do this. So when I put my high beams on, I get a brighter light, but I don't get it forward. I get it around me. I can actually see further with the normal beam. So be careful what kind of bulb you replace that with. So yeah, I think that sums up my review of the Yamaha YBR 125. I think it's a 2014 version. I would definitely kit it out with the top box at the very least. The shield has been useful. The engine guards have saved me a lot of money from the occasional, occasional, I've only crashed it twice. I'll show you the crash damage actually. So, this cracked and rubbed off. I've got a scratch on that side. A few scratches on here. A little scratch on the screen here, but actually it came out quite well. It's not that visible. The main damage was to this, and that is really trivial. This bar, same again. They actually bent this, bent in. I caused a scratch here, but because it's only steel, you can bend it back and it doesn't snap. So I just put a big long bar in it, bent it back, and I was happy with that. And I did this. I mean, I came off into gravel and then got into a grassy ditch. So I'm sure crashes on this, your mileage would vary. I'm not saying it's a brilliant crash bike. I'm just saying that's what happened when I did it. I think that's the last year that MOT notices were required. I really should take that off, but you know, I'll probably be selling this bike pretty soon because, as much as I fucking love it, there's no point having two. Not for now. These pannier things, they've rusted. I mean, they haven't rusted in a way that would be structurally damaging, but they don't look that great. And I love these little top boxes. They're great at the moment. I mean, I'll give you a little peek. I mean, I hope the wind hasn't completely ruined the quality, but essentially, I've got some motorcycle gear in here. I'm dropping off at my friend's later. That's all it is. It's a motorcycle jacket. I think you could fit a bit more in there. But yeah, definitely a nice addition for touring. You just push this button and it comes off, so it clips into these, and then you just clip it in. Done. That's it. Nice and secure. So same with the other one. Even though, I mean, a lot of panniers, you see that they're smaller on the exhaust size. It's not the case on this, and the pannier is the same size as the other one. Usually it's because the exhaust is in the way and they cut into it. The top box, I have a lot of stuff in here. I carry a lot of things. Got the drone, got my sat-nav holder, got a spare chain, got a blanket that my mum left at mine. I need to drop that off. A little container. Guess I could use that for water or petrol, but it's just empty at the moment. And a few odds and sods. Honestly, I'm surprised at how much you can get in here. I mean, bear in mind it's not far off level, and there's height to this box. You can get quite a lot in here. You can fit the helmet. I find the helmet I struggle with because I've got so many additions to it, like the GoPro, and you want to see the helmet. It's got a lot of stuff on it. It hurts my neck. It's so heavy, but yeah, it's a shame. I don't think they do the YBR anymore. I think it's gone. I think they've replaced it with the YS. But in all honesty, the YS looks really similar. I don't think they've changed it very much. I think the YS is just the YBR with some minor modifications. And I'm happy with it. It's a brilliant bike. I don't think they keep the value very well. I think this rust really lets it down. If I was going to sell this, I'd probably replace that, because it would just bring up the value of the bike quite a lot, because it just really distracts from it. I could probably take it off and paint it in, what, say an hour or so. Sand it down, an hour of sanding, and a bit of paint. I'm sure it'll look better than that. Forgot to mention it does have a centre stand, which I find very useful when I'm filling the bike up, or I've got it in storage. I actually keep the bike anchored to the ground with a chain. It's a very comfortable, very capable bike, and I would definitely recommend this to someone looking to get their first bike. I think, yeah, it's a brilliant first bike, very useful, very economical as well. So I can't remember how big the tank is. It's not very large. It doesn't say. Well, it can't be that big. I think 6 or 7 litres. You don't think that's a lot, but it'll do about 300 miles on that. So, I mean, I can have a pretty darn good day out for less than, even if I always fill it with premium fuel because it just costs so little to fill. It would be something like £6 full in fuel, and at the moment fuel prices are like, what, $1.20 for petrol. So I just get the premium stuff and fill it up. Filling up's a bit of a hassle because it's not the traditional flip up type. You've got to take this off and put it somewhere. What I tend to do is I leave the key in it. I'll show you actually. I leave the key in it and I put it here. That's not too bad. Fill it's quite a hassle. I'm sure it's the same with all bikes, but I find it just froths up like crazy, and it just keeps turning off the pump. So I hold it quite a bit up, but then I tend to get fuel over here. So I just take a cloth with me to clean that up afterwards. What I will say is though, you can fill it up quite high. I mean, normally you'd stop, but you can get it high. You can get it up to, say, I think you're not supposed to fill it past that hole, but you can probably fill it internally to about that insert there, and that's nearly an extra litre. So if you're doing a really long distance journey, you can do that, and then the needle will point all the way past F. There's nothing fancy on this bike. I mean, you've got your, let's turn it on, it's a neutral, it starts up, there's a little prime for the fuel pump. Then you've got the starter, starts no problem. You've got your dot fluid for your brakes here. When it's not actually that low, it's just it's on its side. I would stand it up for you, but it's actually very windy. Fucking hell, he's going a bit fast, isn't he? I'm frightened of the bike blowing over at the moment. Brake, clutch, right indicator. I like that the right is on the right and the left is on the left. Some bikes aren't like that. You got your lights are always on. So if I go show you, they're on now. That can't be turned off. And then you've got your main beam, which I find isn't. See the way it kind of fans out when it's on main beam. I don't really think it adds much to the distance, just the brightness around you. You got your speedo, your odometer, and your fuel tank, and there's nothing else on here because frankly you don't need it. You got your trip counter. It's on the side here. It's a little twisty bit. If you want to reset it, you need to twist that around. If you're wondering what the zip ties are, don't worry. It's a little a little custom jig I've done to have the drone controller bolted here, and it's quite well protected. There's no wind can get to it or anything. It doesn't really block the speedo. I can still see 30, 40, 50, 60 even with the drone control there. Don't think it's quite legal, but no one's gonna know. The brand mount, output here, and I wired it down to the battery. I would suggest that you don't wire anything directly to the battery. I mean, a lot of electronics, they say, yeah, just wire it straight to the battery. It's not a good idea. You get this small bleed current, and over time it'll just drain the battery, and you'll come to your bike and it'll be flat. Even an LED, it's enough to, you know, drain the battery over a week or 2 weeks. Say if you're not using it in the winter, it'll definitely flatten it. So what I would suggest you do is you wire a relay in. So wire a relay against the ignition. Have it so the ignition turns on the relay, and the relay makes the connection to the battery, and that way things only connect. Things only get powered when the bike's in ignition. And I think that's pretty much what you'd want in most cases if you got like a sat nav like I've got, or any of our electrics you want to run off it. Bike's getting plastered in sand. And to think, I cleaned it for you guys. This is as good as I could get it with the patience I had. It was pretty cold, so I didn't take it too far. So yeah, that's the end of my review. A review of the YBR. I will be replacing this soon with another bike, something with a bit more oomph. And I've lost my old plates, and I've got my full license. So anyway, don't know how much of this was destroyed by the wind. Hopefully some of this is legible, because if not, I'm still going to try and edit it, because I'm not coming out here in the cold again to do another review for you guys. I'm just going to hop on my bike now. So let's take it for another spin. Let's go home. Let's get out of this wind. Let's get out of here. Skedaddle. Oh god, that was wind. That wasn't me turning. Oh shit. Right, fuck that off. Oh wow, the wind. I think I need to get to some shelter pretty quickly. So, I mean, I guess from a driving point of view, it's worth noting that because the bike's quite light, it does seem to get knocked around a bit by the wind. I don't think other bikes seem to have this problem as much. I've noticed when I'm in really exposed areas, yeah, it can be pretty scary. I'm just cursing the whole time, going fuck. But it is very nimble. It's very fun to drive. It's very forgiving. You know, if you grab a fistful of brakes, it doesn't endo. It doesn't want to flip. It doesn't want to do anything stupid like that. It's just a sharp stop. The suspension is pretty good. It's really comfortable. I think combined with the seat, it's never had a problem with this bike being uncomfortable. The seating position is great. Your arms are just nice and straightforward. You're not leaning on them like you're on a sports bike. You're just kind of just sitting down like on a chair with your arms out. It's almost as if your arms are out using a computer. It's kind of that angle. Your feet, I mean, they're in a nice position too. It kind of just feels like you're sitting down in a chair with like a little footstand underneath it, and it's just comfortable for long periods of time. I know it's a naked bike. I don't really feel the wind a lot. There's probably a lot to do with this shield. It doesn't really bother me, even when it does rain heavily. I don't know, maybe it's just me, my temperament. I'm not really that bothered. Yeah, I can get a bit depressing if you're out in the cold and the rain for a really long time, but I don't think that's specific to this bike. I think that's it's just dull. It's horrible, isn't it? Don't know what else to say. That's it. That's everything. I do like that the mirrors, they're attached to the handlebars. Might not seem that useful, but like if I want to look behind me and I want to see a bit more, I can like kind of move the mirror around. Especially if I'm like stuck at traffic, I can kind of waddle forward and move one screen forward, then the other, and I can see around me. I know there are some style bikes where the mirrors are fixed. don't really think. I don't know what to think about that. I'm sure there are advantages to having fixed mirrors, but I prefer the ones that are attached to the handlebars. The bike, as you may know, it's a 125. 125 kilos is pretty light. I don't know of any motorbikes that are much lighter than that. It's definitely one of the lightest motorbike there is. I do like it. It makes it easier for manhandling it around, and I used to have to drag this up a slippy pavement that was all covered in moss. It was uphill for about 10 meters, and you know what? Yeah, it was pretty treacherous, pretty scary. But I think the fact that the bike was so light made it possible. Otherwise, I really wouldn't have had anywhere to store this bike. Now it's not such a big deal. My new house has places I can put it which are a bit more secure. But I don't think this is a bike that someone would want to steal. It's not expensive. It's not fast. Parts for it are pretty cheap. It's just a very reasonable bike. It's cost, I think, to insure it the first year I had it, the petrol prices that I mentioned before. First year I had this bike, I'd had my driving license for, say, 2 years, and I'd never actually driven the car since I had the license. So I had no claims, bonuses, or anything like that. To insure it as a 25-year-old, was I? 26, 25, something like that. It cost me somewhere in the region of £360, fully comp. So, I mean, that's bloody reasonable. At the end of the day, that's someone bankrolling me to drive my motorbike day in, day out, fully comprehensive, no matter what happens. You know, £350 for the whole year. That is really reasonable. I will admit, though, that the excess, I think, the voluntary excess was pretty high. I think it was nearly £1,000, possibly £800. As I've been driving more, I've been finding that I can reduce the excess to zero. When you are going for insurance, I would suggest that you tamper with the excess a little bit. Just change it, see what you get. Put it to 0, put it to 200, put it to 500, put it to £1,000. You'll find that it costs a bit more to have no excess, but it's kind of worth it. If you're gonna have a crash, and you know there's already enough shit going on, like you might be in hospital, you've wrecked all your gear, there's loads of stuff that won't be covered. Like there's no chance in hell my drone will be covered in a crash. My sat nav will probably come off. You know, I don't want to then replace all that stuff and only to find out I've still got like an excess of like £800 to pay. It means the crash is costing me a fortune. You're going to be paying out quite a lot, and you won't really have the option. And I think if you're trying to save money, I don't think saving money in your excess is really where you want to go. You know, pay as much as you're comfortably able to do. That's what I would suggest. I'm getting a little bit peckish, actually. Could do myself some snarks. Should I go to the McDonald's?